Chapter 8 The Long Way Home. When the Marathon emerged from hyperspace, Ino began to appreciate the full scale of the crisis surrounding her. The local starbase did not respond to Marathon's hails, and the reason why soon became apparent. "The starbase is disabled, Captain," said Petty Officer Mancini. "We're not detecting any life signs. The crew must have been irradiated by the cosmic storm." "Any other stations in this system?" Ino asked. The EW officer shook his head. "All disabled, likely due to the death of their crews." Ino put her hands on her hips, thinking hard. Captain Rylan looked up from a map of the region. "The shockwave and subsequent storm has affected most of my people's territory. We may come across more scenes like this before we find a spaceport, orbital or otherwise. I've never heard of a natural disaster taking out starbases for light years around, disabling FTL communication, or having an epicenter hundreds of light years away," Sota remarked from the far side of the bridge. "Whatever this is, it might just be the deadliest catastrophe the galaxy has ever known. By my own estimations, it could take 60 to 70 years for my people to rebuild all of our stations and colonies," Rylan said. "But I have only seen 2 systems so far. The scale of this disaster could be larger still." Ino, Rylan, and the bridge crew spent an hour bickering over 2 different plans of action. Sota and a few others wanted to turn around and return to the Imaka star system, to rejoin with the Coalition Navy at Savasia. Ino was against this idea. The planet Savasia had just been the site of a major battle and did not have the infrastructure needed to support its own people, let alone the millions of aliens who were part of the Coalition fleets and armies. "Lithoids and toxoids require food and air completely different to our own," Ino argued. "Savasia can't sustain them. The Coalition fleet would have turned around and started heading toward the Hodranis wormhole by now." Ino wanted the Marathon to continue on its current path, making the journey to Hodranis alone. Ino reasoned that they would most likely intercept the Coalition fleet along the way. "The wormhole is our safest option. Human space is over 5,000 light-years away from this region," Ino said. "Once we're on the other side of the wormhole, we'll be safe. There's no way that shockwave reached all the way to the Orion arm." To Ino's surprise, Rylan spoke up in support of her idea. "I agree. I will explain the situation to my crew. They have already demonstrated an admirable willingness to sacrifice for our valuable passenger. I'll try to motivate them to sacrifice one more time." "Did he really say that?" Elodie of Liechtenstein had already asked this question once, but her sense of disbelief was still overwhelming her. Ino nodded again. "I wish I could be as good a captain as Rylan," Ino confessed. "He's like everything right with the world." Ino and Elodie were in the captain's quarters, where Elodie was helping Ino with a personal project during their off-duty time. Ino was standing in front of her closet, holding a black garbage bag. Elodie was supposed to be throwing Ino's civilian clothes into the bag, but Ino's story about what happened on the bridge that morning had distracted her. "What about your team?" Ino asked. "How are they holding up?" "Stressed out," Elodie said. "Same goes for the whole crew, really. Everyone's just high-strung." "I know," Ino said. "This," Ino shook the garbage bag, "is just part of what I'm doing to fix that." "What are you doing, if I'm allowed to ask?" Elodie inquired. "I talked to the person in charge of the damage control teams," Ino explained. "I got them to prioritize repairing the matter recycling system, the All Ranks Club, and the virtual combat simulator. Give people something to do in their downtime again." Elodie's eyes lit up. "The VCS is back online? That's great news," Elodie said. "God knows I need to spar someone before long. So these clothes are for when you go back to the ARC? Elodie examined one of Ino's civilian outfits. Ino held out the trash bag and shook it. "Not anymore. Back when I first joined the crew, I thought I might have a chance to play the field or go on a date or two, but I'm the captain now, and that's all out the airlock." "What about Captain Quinn?" Elodie asked in a sly voice. Ino blushed. Elodie made a delighted squeaking noise. "Ah, there's something there, I think." "You're seeing things," Ino snapped. She grabbed the casual outfit from Elodie and put it in the trash bag. "Just keep loading clothes. I'm dumping all of them into the matter recycler." "What?" Elodie gasped as Ino wrenched a long dress out of her hands. "The crew needs food and repair parts more than I need a date," Ino said. "I'm going to ask all of the command crew to put some of their personal items into the matter recycler, and I thought I should set a good example." Elodie reached into the closet and grabbed a pair of dresses. "You're not recycling these ones, Esperanta. The cyborg captain is going to thank me for saving them. Trust me." Word of Ino's plan spread through the marathon over the next day. Most of the crew supported the idea of going back to Earth via the wormhole, but a few complained about factors beyond Ino's control. "Axiom said it'll take us 6 months to get to the wormhole from here," Lieutenant Zapata complained. "Is there really no faster way back to Earth? It only took us a month and a half to reach Savassia when we first came through the wormhole." "Some of the hyper relays are out of commission," Ino explained. "If they get repaired, we might get there faster. Also, don't forget there's an enemy vessel shadowing us." In fact, nobody forgot this detail. The Destican warship Kailasha was still following Marathon at a distance, keeping outside of weapons range. The enemy constantly ran with their cloaking sails unfurled, meaning the ship was extremely difficult to spot. The rough space weather caused dim aurora to sometimes appear around Kailasha, giving away her location. Whole teams of crew members were devoted to keeping track of Kailasha by any means, up to and including using binoculars and telescopes to spot the enemy through a window. "She's not alone out there," Ino said, peering at the distant Kailasha during her next visit to the hangar bay. "For all we know, they might be having the same communications problems as us, but that won't stop them trying to call for reinforcements." Captain Alan Sharp, a starfighter pilot, folded his arms and looked worried. "Are we calling for reinforcements?" he asked. "Yes, we are," Ino sighed. "But it's strange. FTL communication systems come with a straightforward read receipt system. We can ping someone to make sure our own transmitters are working and that they're receiving our messages." "And?" Captain Sharp said, dreading the answer. "Our messages are getting out," Ino said, "but I don't think anyone can hear us. There's no sign that our signals are being received. Not the Coalition fleet, which is supposed to be just a few systems away from us. Not the Coalition Stratcom either. Savassia won't reply to us, nor will any of the nearby habitat stations. I just don't get it." Ino trailed off, looking concerned. "Do you think that enemy ship out there could be interfering?" she asked. "It's possible," Captain Sharp said. "My wingmen and I, we fly electromagnetic warfare starfighters. Trust me when I say that we can make magic happen with the EW systems on our ships. If the enemy has an EW suite on their ship, then they can too." Ino shook her head. Then she gestured to the open space just beyond the end of the hangar. A barely visible energy shield kept the atmosphere inside. "The meteorology team has identified the type of cosmic storm we're flying in," Ino said. "We're caught in the middle of a radiant storm. It's a type of space weather that degrades cloaking and electromagnetic warfare systems." Captain Sharp frowned. "If we reconfigure our radiation shielding systems, my squadron can fly in this weather," he said. Ino pointed at the distant enemy vessel. "Talk to the other squadron leaders and come up with a plan to attack the enemy in this weather," Ino said. "Bring it to me when you're done. Understood?" Captain Sharp hesitated. Shouldn't Lieutenant Commander Beninato be in the loop on this? Sharp said, raising an eyebrow. Beninato is my second in command, Ino said. He just give the same orders as me. If it's all the same to you, said Captain Sharp, I'll just bring Beninato into the loop. Make sure this is all above board. Sota Beninato had ended his duty shift for the day and was planning to spend his free time in the virtual combat simulator. He had already donned the slim VR suit and helmet and was about to step into one of the simulator chambers when Ino caught him. Whoa, you look pissed, Sota said. One of the squadron leaders just backtalked me, Ino said. I need you to back me up. Sota's expression suddenly became very stern. Who was it? Captain Sharp, SU-77 pilot. Sota passed his VR helmet to Ino. Here, you go blow off some steam. I'm going to crack some skulls. Sota stormed out of the virtual combat simulator, pulling his communicator out of his pocket and sending a message. Liechtenstein, I need to borrow 2 of your Marines. There's an insubordinate SOB who needs the fear of God. Ino stayed in the VCS, immersing herself in a computer-simulated battlefield. She stormed a Fellowship military base, blasting holographic Destican soldiers with a sim gun for half an hour. It was a good way to blow off stress. Ino made a mental note to tell Elodie she was right about this place. Once Ino was satisfied with her time in the simulator, she stepped into the locker room to drop off the VR helmet for someone else to use. She found a lower enlisted crew member waiting patiently for someone to turn in a helmet. A scrawny 19-year-old man who had started to lose his hair despite his age. I've seen you around, Ino said. Fitzgerald, right? The chaplain's assistant? Specialist Fitzgerald. Yes, ma'am, said the chaplain's assistant. Were you the one running the Destican Fortress scenario in Chamber 5? Could you leave it running, please? Yeah, sure, Ino said. You trying to work off some stress, too? Fitzgerald nodded. Lots of crew have been to see the chappie in the past few days. We've had a lot of work to do. Specialist Fitzgerald's words gnawed and ate at Ino's mind until her curiosity got the better of her. Instead of going to her quarters or the bridge, Ino went down to Deck 15 and entered the chaplain's office. The ship's new chaplain was an American woman named Wren Oliver. Wren was much older than Ino, in her late 30s. The certificates, awards, and plaques on the walls suggested that Wren was a devout member of the American Lutheran Church, and that the church's leadership held her in very high regard. I want to get a sense of the crew's morale, Ino said. I've seen and heard a few things that concern me, and I was hoping you might be able to shed some light on the happenings in the lower decks. Chaplain Oliver bit her lip and placed her hand on a thick manila folder on her desk. What a coincidence, the chaplain said. I just called for the chief medical officer to come here and speak to me, because I am also starting to have concerns. I suppose the 3 of us may glean something if we put our heads together. Our heads? Said a voice from the door. Lieutenant Zapata had arrived. Ino, Zapata, and Oliver all sat down at the chaplain's desk. Ino shot a curious glance at the new chief medical officer and saw he was just as confused. Chaplain Oliver opened her binder. Normally I would not violate the privacy of those who come to see me, the chaplain said, but I am starting to become concerned for the health of the crew as a whole, and I feel compelled to raise an alarm. Zapata leaned forward as Oliver tipped the folder toward himself and Ino, revealing the mental health profile of an officer. Over the past 4 days, some 250 members of the crew have been to see me, the chaplain said, and all of them came to my office for the exact same reason. Nightmares. They all report the same dream, in which they see a Destican. I would have dismissed this as nerves about the war, but there is a trend, an alarming trend. Chaplain Oliver spread the papers over the desk. All of the people suffering nightmares are women, the chaplain said. Not a single male has reported a nighttime disturbance, and that includes our small number of crew who fully transitioned before joining the coalition. I cannot think of a reason or plausible explanation for this, but these nightmares are happening to our female crew in such large numbers that I cannot be silent. What do you think, Doctor? Ino asked, examining one of the papers. Mass psychosis would affect the whole crew, wouldn't it? This sort of thing doesn't discriminate by gender. I know. It sounds so strange, Zapata replied. It reminds me of those old rumors from the border colonies before the war. You know, the stories about Destican telepaths invading people's dreams before a mass abduction happened. Oh, yes, I've heard the stories about Destican telepaths marking abduction victims, Chaplain Oliver said, nodding. Ino rolled her eyes and scoffed. Oh, please. The Coalition Science Directorate has determined that telepathy is impossible. There's got to be a logical reason for this phenomenon. Maybe a mass hysteria going on. Let's investigate this like rational people, all right? Zapata and Oliver both frowned. I'll get the medical team on it, Zapata said. I'm sure if we dig deep enough, we'll find something.
Creeping in my sword's getting out of control. I gotta find my escape, get out of this black hole. Cause justice in the world is hard to find. Time has come, gotta make up my mind. No matter how deep or remote I hide, all my thoughts seem caught up inside. Creeps from the deep's gonna be freaking up your mind.